Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals. On today's episode of the Warren Christmas Village channel, we're going to be crafting modular holes for your D&D, Pathfinder, Warhammer, Frostgrave, and other fantasy role-playing and miniatures war games. These are a piece of cake to make, and they're made out of cardboard, basic craft supplies, and sponge bits. This craft is a whole lot of fun. And here is the list of ingredients for our next craft project. We're going to need a Sharpie, piece of scrap cardboard. I went with the corrugated cardboard, which means I needed some masking tape to cover up my edges. We're also going to need some craft scissors, a paintbrush, PVA glue, black paint, a template for the cardboard. You could also use the bottom of your Arlene's Techie glue, and then we're going to need some sponges that have this nice texture for them to get the stone effect. Now these sponges come in a variety of brands. You want to make sure you get the cellulose artificial plastic sponges though. So to begin with, take your cardboard and your circle template and go ahead and trace the circle on the cardboard. Grab your trusty scissors and there you go. You've got the base for your hole. Here is an example of what we're going to turn the sponges into once we do the sponge food technique. And here are some more examples. What we want is different thicknesses of sponges when we cut the pieces. So once again, take the trusty scissors and start cutting the sponges in various thicknesses and shapes or bricks or whatever you desire. These also make really good weathered stones. So if you don't necessarily want to cut these into rectangular bricks, go ahead. But make sure you get different thicknesses because we're going to use this to layer up on top of the cardboard to create the illusion that this is a hole in the ground. So for that, we will require different thicknesses. Here's what everything looks like, what we're going to strive to go towards. So make sure you cut those bricks appropriately. There you go. Lots of different sizes, shapes, sizes, thicknesses. Bam, 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 bam. Now, because I used corrugated cardboard, I needed something to cover up my layers just in case. And I like to do this and make a habit of this every time I use corrugated cardboard. So I take my masking tape and cover up the edges. This will paint over nicely, and plus I'm going to use the bricks to cover everything up. Now, in hindsight, I would prefer to use a cereal box cardboard or better yet, a wooden disc from the craft store. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I wanted to use everyday items that people have in their craft repertoire. But here's an example of the wooden disc that I would use. So once we've got our cardboard all prepped and ready to go, now it's time to glue on the sponge bits. Here you go. You can see how I've got the different sizes, different thicknesses. Put the pink one up here so you can see the thicker. So I put the thicker one on the outside of the cardboard and then layer the thinner one like that. And this will create the illusion of a hole in the wall. Then I like to also put smaller pieces together because it adds nice visual interest. So fire up your glue gun and just start gluing everything on there. If you're familiar with some of my other sponge food tutorials, you can use the pre-treated bricks. Just cut them with an X-Acto blade into the shape that you'd like. But for this tutorial, I decided not to use the pre-treated bricks. So as an introduction for people who would like to try some sponge food. On the back of the terrain piece, I went ahead and reinforced everything with some more layers of hot glue just to keep it more solid. And here's what everything kind of looked like. I put the smaller pieces towards the center. Next step is to seal the sponges and cardboard with the sealant. This is made using equal parts PVA glue and acrylic paint with a 50-50 ratio, equal parts. Don't forget to paint the back to prevent the cardboard from warping and to once again reinforce the terrain piece. The next step is to base coat the terrain, particularly the stonework or the sponges, with a cheap acrylic paint. I used a kind of a darker green gray for my base coat, and you kind of want to go from dark to light. So the next color I chose was a medium gray, so I can take my colors from dark to light, and I'm only going to really go with 3 on this one, going with a dark gray base coat, a medium gray, some green touch highlights, and then I'm going to go for a white. So the next step is to go ahead and add a little bit of green highlights. I wanted some variation in the stonework, and I wanted it to maybe look as if there was some vegetative growth at some point, as if this was maybe an older piece of hole in the terrain. And the next step is to go ahead and do white dry brush highlights on the stonework, which will tone down the green bricks, but still keep a little bit of visual interest for the eye. And then the next step is to go ahead and add another layer of sealant, and then I went back with another layer of black paint. And there you go. There is the finished terrain piece. Nice hole in the ground, or you could make a hole in the wall for your D&D game. It's a whole lot of fun.